The elderly man kept passing out in his garden, but his adopted daughters refused to let social workers separate them. When they discovered what he'd been doing every night after they went to sleep, the girls couldn't stop crying. Howard Jensen's knees hit the dirt first, then his hands. The summer heat pressed down on his back as he struggled to catch his breath. His garden tools scattered across the ground. The tomato plants he'd been tending swayed in the afternoon breeze, their leaves brushing against his gray hair. "Not now," he muttered, trying to push himself up. His arms shook. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto the soil. The medication bottle in his pocket felt heavy, a reminder he'd skipped his morning dose again. Mrs. Patterson's voice carried over the fence. "Mr. Jensen, are you all right over there?" Howard forced himself to sit up, his back against the wooden garden box. "Just fine, Martha." Taking a closer look at these tomatoes, his neighbor's silence told him she didn't believe it. She'd been watching him more closely since Sarah passed. 5 years, and the whole neighborhood still treated him like he might break. The phone buzzed in his pocket. Linda Carson, his old colleague from teaching days, now a social worker. He'd been dodging her calls. "Howard, you can't keep ignoring me," she said when he finally answered. "The center needs volunteers. These kids, Linda, we've been over this." His voice came out rougher than intended. He watched a yellow butterfly land on one of his withering rose bushes. Sarah had loved those roses. "Just one visit. That's all I'm asking. You've been alone in that house too long." The butterfly took off, disappearing over the fence. Howard closed his eyes. "One visit. Then you stopped calling." 2 hours later, Howard stood in the hallway of the Brighton Youth Center, the smell of industrial cleaner burning his nose. Children's artwork covered the walls, bright crayon drawings of houses and families. Linda led him past several rooms filled with kids playing or studying. "Most of these children will find homes eventually," she explained. "But we have some special cases. Like these 4. She stopped at a window overlooking a small courtyard. 4 girls sat at a concrete table, huddled over what looked like homework. The oldest, probably early teens, pointed at something in a textbook while the youngest, barely school age, traced letters in a notebook. "The Williams sisters," Linda said softly. "Destiny, Maya, Kira, and Tiana. Been here 8 months. 3 families have considered them. But what? They refuse to be separated. Most families aren't looking to adopt 4 children, especially older ones." Linda's eyes fixed on Howard. "Destiny's 14, practically raised her sisters herself. Maya's 12, brilliant but withdrawn. Kira's 8, still having nightmares about their last foster home. Tiana's 6, stopped talking for 2 months after they arrived here." Howard watched as the oldest girl, Destiny, looked up sharply, sensing their observation. Her eyes met his through the window, hard and protective. She shifted slightly, placing herself between her sisters and the strangers watching them. "They're good kids, Howard. Just need someone to give them a chance." The memory hit him like a physical blow. Himself at 12, sitting in a similar room, watching potential parents walk by. Always passing him over for the younger children, the easier cases. The way hope died a little more each time. How many families have rejected them? His voice came out hoarse. 7. Linda touched his arm. "Would you like to meet them?" Howard's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his collar. "I wouldn't know what to say. Just be yourself. They've had enough people trying to be something they are not." The girls looked up as Howard and Linda entered the courtyard. Destiny's arm went around Tiana automatically. Maya closed a textbook. Kira scooted closer to her older sisters. "Girls," Linda said warmly, "this is my friend Howard. He used to be a teacher." "Hello," Howard managed. His throat felt dry. Up close, he could see the worn edges of their clothes, the way Maya's shoes were starting to split at the seams. Destiny nodded once, polite but distant. "Nice to meet you, sir. What subject did you teach?" Maya asked suddenly, then looked down as if surprised by her own voice. "Math and science. 32 years at Lincoln High." Howard found himself moving closer, drawn by Maya's flash of interest. "What are you studying there?" "Algebra," Maya said. "We're learning about equations." "Maya's top of her class," Destiny added, a hint of pride breaking through her guard. "She helps me with my homework sometimes." Howard pulled over a plastic chair, movements slow and deliberate. "May I?" At Destiny's nod, he sat. "You know, I always found that teaching something was the best way to really understand it. Tiana peered around Destiny's arm, her small face curious. Kira's grip on her pencil loosened slightly. They talked about math for a while, then science. Howard showed them a simple trick for remembering the order of planets. Tiana giggled for the first time when he made up a silly rhyme about Mercury. Even Destiny's shoulders relaxed marginally. Later, in Linda's office, Howard stared at the girl's file. 4 photographs paper-clipped to pages of history he couldn't bring himself to read yet. Their caseworker thinks splitting them up might be the only option left, Linda said quietly. The system isn't designed for keeping sibling groups together, especially older ones. Howard thought of Destiny's fierce protectiveness, Maya's hidden brilliance, Kira's watchful eyes, Tiana's tentative smile. He thought of his empty house, the quiet rooms, the garden that had stopped thriving. What would it take, he heard himself ask, to adopt all 4? Linda's pen clattered to her desk. Howard, are you serious? Tell me what it would take. It's not that simple. You're single, over 60. I have a 4-bedroom house that's paid for. Steady pension. Savings. Teaching experience. The words came faster now. They need someone, Linda, someone who won't give up on them. The approval process would be intense. Home studies, background checks, interviews. The board might not. Tell me what it would take, Howard repeated. I want to try. Linda looked at him for a long moment, then pulled out a stack of forms. It won't be easy. Howard thought of Destiny's eyes, so much like his own at that age. Nothing worth doing ever is. He left the center as the sun was setting, the adoption application heavy in his briefcase. In his garden, the butterfly had returned, resting on a rosebud that had finally decided to bloom. The phone rang again. Mrs. Patterson, probably checking on him after his fall. Howard let it go to voicemail. He had research to do, calls to make, a house to prepare. 4 girls who needed a home. Maybe, just maybe, they could save each other. The adoption committee room felt too small. Howard sat at the end of a long table, 5 pairs of eyes studying him like he was a specimen under a microscope. His application folder lay open in front of the head committee member, Mrs. Reynolds. Mr. Jensen, she began, adjusting her glasses. You're requesting to adopt 4 children. At your age, as a single parent, with no prior experience. I've been teaching children for over 3 decades, Howard interrupted, then caught himself. Getting defensive wouldn't help. Teaching is not parenting, Mr. Jensen. Mrs. Reynolds' pen tapped against the table. Especially not with children who have experienced trauma. The word hit him hard. Trauma. He remembered being 12, sitting in an office much like this one. The boy has issues with authority, the social worker had said. Challenging behaviors. Might be better to consider someone younger. Howard straightened in his chair. I understand trauma, Mrs. Reynolds. I spent 8 years in foster care myself. That made them pause. Papers shuffled. Someone cleared their throat. Could you elaborate on that experience? Dr. Martinez, the child psychologist, leaned forward. I aged out of the system, bounced between 6 homes. Howard's hands clasped tightly in his lap. I know what it's like to be passed over because you're too old, too difficult, too much work. These girls deserve better than that. Your medical records indicate you're on heart medication, another committee member pointed out. Regular checkups with a cardiologist. Controlled with medication. My doctor provided a full statement of fitness. Mrs. Reynolds sighed. Mr. Jensen, raising 4 children is physically demanding. The youngest is 6, the oldest 14. They'll need constant supervision, transportation to activities, help with homework. I have a support system, Howard cut in. My neighbor Martha Patterson is a retired nurse. Linda Carson from the youth center lives 10 minutes away. I've already researched after-school programs and counseling services. The questioning continued for another hour. Howard's shirt stuck to his back, but he answered everything. His pension amount, his house's square footage, his plans for emergency situations. Finally, Mrs. Reynolds closed the folder. We'll review your application and be in touch. Outside, Howard leaned against his car, breathing deeply. A memory surfaced. His last foster home, the Petersons. They'd been kind enough, but by then he'd been too angry, too hurt to accept it. His phone buzzed. Martha Patterson. Howard, I saw the adoption agency car earlier. Is everything all right? He could hear the concern in her voice, but something else too. Uncertainty. Just some paperwork to sort out, Martha. It's just, people are talking. A man your age, alone, 4 young girls. Howard's grip tightened on the phone. Did you need something, Martha? A pause. Just checking on you. Ever since Sarah. I have to go. He hung up, stomach churning. The next few days brought more whispers. Howard felt them at the grocery store, the pharmacy, the hardware store where he bought paint for the spare bedrooms. His neighbors watched from behind curtains as social workers conducted home visits. Then came the call. They're willing to meet you, Linda said. This Saturday. A supervised visit at your house. Howard spent 3 days preparing. He cleaned every room twice. Bought new bedding, desk lamps, art supplies. Filled the kitchen with snacks he hoped they'd like. Saturday morning, he paced the living room, checking his watch every few minutes. The social worker arrived first. Then Linda's car pulled up, and 4 girls climbed out slowly, holding hands like a chain. Welcome, Howard said, his voice shaky. Come in, please. Destiny entered first, scanning everything with quick eyes. Maya followed, then Kira clutching Tiana's hand. They stood in the entryway, a tight cluster of uncertainty. Would you like to see your rooms? Howard asked. If you decide to stay, you can decorate them however you want. Upstairs, he'd prepared 2 bedrooms, one for the older girls, one for the younger ones, each with new beds and empty shelves waiting to be filled. Tiana broke away first, drawn to a dollhouse in the smaller room. Kira followed, touching the bright yellow curtains with tentative fingers. There's a desk for studying, Howard told Maya, pointing to the corner. And bookshelves. I noticed you like science fiction. Maya's eyes widened slightly at the collection of books he'd bought. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to reach for them. Destiny stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Why are you doing this? The question hung in the air. The social worker shifted, but Howard met Destiny's gaze. Because every child deserves a home, he said simply. A real one. We're not a charity case. No, you're not. You're 4 incredible young women who deserve a chance. That's all I want to give you. Destiny's jaw worked. What if it doesn't work out? What if you decide we're too much trouble? Then we'll work through it. Together. Howard stepped closer. I'm not giving up on you. Any of you. That's what they all say. I know. But I'm not them. A shout from downstairs interrupted them. They found Tiana in the backyard, crouching by the garden boxes. Can we grow flowers? She asked, the most words Howard had heard from her yet. Of course. He knelt beside her, ignoring his protesting knees. What kind would you like? Sunflowers, Kira said suddenly. We had those before. Howard saw Destiny flinch. Another piece of their past he'd have to learn. Sunflowers are perfect, he said. They are strong. They always turn toward the light. The visit lasted 2 hours. By the end, Tiana had drawn a picture of the garden they would plant. Kira had found the box of art supplies in the kitchen. Maya had quietly borrowed a book. Destiny had asked practical questions about school registration and house rules. After they left, Howard sat in his empty living room. Their presence lingered like echoes, Tiana's fingerprints on the window, Maya's careful reorganization of the bookshelf, Kira's half-finished drawing on the coffee table. His phone rang. The adoption committee. Mr. Jensen. Mrs. Reynolds' voice was clipped. We've reviewed everything. There will be conditions. Weekly check-ins. Mandatory family counseling. Quarterly reviews. Howard closed his eyes. And a pause. The paperwork will be ready on Monday. He barely heard the rest. After hanging up, he walked to the garden. The tomato plants needed pruning. The roses were struggling. But there was space for sunflowers. Linda texted, girls are excited. Scared, but excited. Destiny asked about school registration. Howard started clearing a new garden bed. His back ached, his hands were dirty, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. 2 weeks later, a moving van pulled up in front of his house. 4 girls climbed out, carrying small bags containing everything they owned. Howard stood in the doorway, keys in hand. Welcome home, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The first morning exploded into chaos at 6:45 a.m. Howard woke to the sound of screaming from the bathroom. Destiny, Maya took my hairbrush. Kira's voice echoed down the hallway. Did not. I have my own brush. Maya shouted back. Howard stumbled out of bed, his slippers half on. In the hallway, Tiana sat crying outside the bathroom door, still in her pajamas. Destiny stood over her, banging on the door. Maya, we're going to be late. Let Kira in. Howard ran a hand through his disheveled gray hair. Girls! All movement stopped. 4 pairs of eyes turned to him, as if suddenly remembering where they were. Sorry, Destiny said quickly. We didn't mean to wake you. I need to brush my teeth, Tiana whimpered. Howard checked his watch. Okay, let's organize this. How about we make a morning schedule? 2 bathrooms, 4 girls. Maya opened the bathroom door, brush in hand. I really didn't take her brush. Found it, Kira called from her room. It was under my bed. Howard held back a smile. Who wants breakfast? In the kitchen, he discovered his first major challenge. 4 different breakfast preferences. Destiny only wanted toast. Maya needed a cereal crispy, not soggy. Kira requested scrambled eggs. Tiana wouldn't eat unless her food didn't touch on the plate. I can help, Maya offered quietly, reaching for the egg carton. I used to cook sometimes. At the other houses. Howard watched as she expertly cracked eggs into a bowl. Thank you, Maya. That's very kind. We should make a grocery list, she continued, not meeting his eyes. We know what everyone likes. Good idea. Would you help me with that later? She nodded, focusing intently on the eggs. The drive to school felt like organizing a military operation. 4 different buildings, 4 different start times. Destiny's high school came first. I can walk, she said, hand on the door handle. You don't have to drive me. I want to, Howard replied. First day and all. She hesitated. The other kids might. Might what? Nothing. She got out quickly. See you at 4. Maya's middle school was next. She clutched her backpack tight, knuckles white. You have your schedule? Howard asked. Emergency numbers? In my phone. She took a deep breath. My test scores? They put me in advanced classes. That's wonderful. What if I can't keep up? Howard turned to face her. Maya, you're brilliant. But if it's too much, we'll figure it out. Together. A tiny smile flickered across her face before she hurried into the building. Elementary school for Kira and Tiana proved hardest. Tiana clung to Howard's leg in the hallway, while Kira stood frozen in her classroom doorway. I don't want to, Tiana sobbed. Want to go home? Howard knelt despite his protesting knees. Remember what we talked about? School just until afternoon, then we'll plant those sunflower seeds. Promise. Promise. Kira watched this exchange, then squared her small shoulders. Come on, Tiana. I'll walk you to your class. Howard's heart swelled as Kira took her sister's hand. Back home, he found Destiny's diary while cleaning up breakfast dishes. It had fallen behind the kitchen counter. He didn't mean to read it, but a page fell open. New house today. Number 8. The man seems nice, but they always do at first. Maya's trying to be brave, but I heard her crying last night. Kira's nightmares are back. Tiana barely talks. I have to stay strong for them. Can't let them be separated. Won't let them be separated. No matter what. Howard closed the diary gently, his hand shaking. He placed it on Destiny's bed, where she would find it. That night, a scream pierced the darkness. Howard ran to find Kira thrashing in her bed, caught in a nightmare. No, please. Don't take them. Kira, sweetheart. Wake up. You're safe. He touched her shoulder gently. Her eyes snapped open, wild with fear. Then recognition dawned. Mr. Jensen. Howard, he corrected softly. Just Howard. I dreamed they were splitting us up again. Her voice trembled. That's not going to happen. He sat on the edge of her bed. Want to talk about it? She shook her head. How about some hot chocolate then? In the kitchen, Howard made 2 mugs while Kira perched on a stool. Neither spoke, but the silence felt comfortable. The last house, Kira said suddenly, they promised to adopt us. All of us. Then they said Destiny was too old. That Maya asked too many questions. That I was too quiet and Tiana was too loud. Howard's grip tightened on his mug. They were wrong. Are you going to change your mind too? No. He met her eyes firmly. Never. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Later that night, Howard sat at his desk, organizing paperwork. School forms, medical records. The girls' sparse history. A photo fell from the stack, his late wife Sarah, smiling in their garden. I wish you were here, he whispered. touching the image. You know what to do. Tears splashed onto the photo. He didn't try to stop them. Dad. Howard turned quickly, wiping his eyes. Tiana stood in the doorway, clutching a stuffed rabbit. What is it, sweetheart? I had a bad dream too. He opened his arms without hesitation. She ran to him, climbing onto his lap. Who's that lady? She pointed to Sarah's photo. That's my wife, Sarah. She went to heaven 5 years ago. Like our mom. Howard's breath caught. Yes, like your mom. Tiana touched the photo gently. She's pretty. Did she like gardens too? She loved them. She taught me everything I know about flowers. Can you teach me? Of course. He hugged her close. Tomorrow, we'll plant those sunflowers. The next evening, Howard called them all to the dining room. He'd spent hours cooking, trying to remember what they'd eaten and liked over the past few days. Maya helped set the table, carefully arranging everything. Destiny came down last, still quiet but less tense than before. I have something for each of you, Howard said once they were seated. He handed out small packages. Inside each was a key on a colorful keychain. To the house, he explained. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. Destiny stared at her key, throat working. Maya ran her fingers over the teeth. Kira immediately put hers on like a necklace. Tiana hugged hers close. Thank you, Destiny said finally, voice rough. For everything. Howard looked at his newfound family, 4 girls who had been strangers just weeks ago. Maya sneaking vegetables onto Tiana's plate when she wasn't looking. Kira showing Destiny her art from school. All of them together, learning to trust, learning to hope. No, he said softly. Thank you. The late August heat pressed down like a heavy blanket as Howard worked in the garden. His hands trembled while pulling weeds around the sunflowers, now reaching towards the sky. The dizziness hit suddenly, making the world tilt. Not here, he muttered, grabbing the garden fence. Not now. His legs gave out. The ground rushed up to meet him, dirt scattering beneath his knees. Dark spots danced at the edges of his vision. Howard. Destiny's voice cut through the haze. She must have come home early from school. He tried to stand, to pretend everything was fine, but his body wouldn't cooperate. Footsteps pounded across the yard. I'm okay, he managed. Just got a little overheated. Destiny's hands gripped his shoulders. Stop lying. I saw you take those pills this morning. The ones you hide in your desk. Howard's vision slowly cleared. Destiny knelt beside him, her face tight with worry and something else, anger. How long have you been sick? She demanded. It's just blood pressure medication. Nothing serious. Really? She reached into his shirt pocket, pulling out the orange prescription bottle. Her eyes scanned the label. Because this is for your heart. And so are the other 3 bottles in your bathroom cabinet. Howard sat back heavily on the ground. You went through my things? After I saw you almost pass out last week? Yeah, I did. Her voice cracked slightly. Were you ever going to tell us? Before he could answer, Maya appeared at the back door. Destiny? Mrs. Patterson is here. She's asking about. She stopped, taking in the scene. Howard? What happened? Nothing, Howard started to say, but Destiny cut him off. He collapsed again, and has been hiding his heart condition from us. Maya's face went pale. She walked over slowly, picking up the pill bottle Destiny had dropped. Destiny, Howard said quietly. Help me up, please. Both girls moved to assist him, their hands gentle but firm. Once standing, he leaned against the fence, fighting another wave of dizziness. Inside, Destiny ordered. Now. In the kitchen, Mrs. Patterson waited with a concerned expression. Howard, I saw you fall from my window. Should I call? No hospitals, he said firmly. I'm fine. You're not fine. Destiny slapped her hand on the counter. You're sick and you're lying about it. I heard shouting. Kira's small voice came from the stairs. Tiana peeked around her shoulder, eyes wide. Howard's heart clenched. Girls, everything's okay. Just a little garden accident. Stop it. Destiny's eyes filled with tears. Stop pretending. They're going to take us away again, aren't they? When they find out you're sick. The kitchen fell silent. Mrs. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. Maybe I should go, she murmured, heading for the door. Through the window, Howard saw her pull out her phone as she crossed the yard. Making calls. Reporting concerns. His stomach turned to ice. No one is taking you anywhere, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You don't know that. Maya spoke for the first time, still clutching the pill bottle. The system doesn't care what we want. Kira started crying. Tiana ran to Howard, wrapping her arms around his legs. Don't be sick, she pleaded. Please don't be sick. Howard sank into a kitchen chair, gathering Tiana into his lap. Come here, all of you. The older girls hesitated, then moved closer. Kira pressed against his side. Yes, I have a heart condition, he admitted. It's being managed with medication. I shouldn't have hidden it from you. And I'm sorry. How bad is it? Maya asked quietly. Not as bad as it looks. I got overheated today, missed a dose this morning. It won't happen again. Promise. Tiana's small fingers gripped his shirt. I promise to be more careful, to take better care of myself. He looked at each of them. But I need you to promise something too. Destiny crossed her arms. What? No more secrets. From any of us. We're family now. Families break, Maya whispered. Not this one. Howard reached for her hand. We're stronger together. Later that evening, after the younger girls were in bed, Howard found job applications scattered across Destiny's desk. The mall is hiring, she said without turning around. And the grocery store. I can work after school, weekends. Destiny, we need money for your medicine. And Maya's advanced classes need special calculators and books. Kira's art supplies. Tiana's, stop. Howard pulled up a chair beside her. That's not your responsibility. Everything is my responsibility. She whirled to face him. I'm the oldest. I have to take care of them. I have to make sure we stay together. No, you don't. Not anymore. He took her hands, weathered skin against young. Let me be the parent. Let yourself be 16. I don't know how, she whispered. We'll figure it out. Together. A knock at the door interrupted them. Maya stood there, holding her laptop. The school counselor called, she said. She's worried about our adjustment period. Wants a meeting tomorrow. Howard's chest tightened, but not from his heart condition. What time? 9. She already emailed the social worker. Destiny's hands clenched into fists. They're looking for reasons. They always do. Then we'll give them none, Howard said firmly. Maya, how are your classes? Hard, but good. I like the challenges. Destiny, keeping my grades up. Join the debate club. See, that's what we'll tell them. Howard stood, ignoring the slight dizziness. That we're adjusting, learning, growing. That night, Howard couldn't sleep. He heard the girls moving around, whispering in the hallway. A family meeting, he realized. Planning, preparing, protecting each other. His phone lit up with a text from Linda. Home inspection next week. Annual review coming up. Stay strong. Howard got up, checking his pill organizer for the next day. He wouldn't miss a dose again. Couldn't risk it. Not with so much at stake. In the garden, the sunflowers Tiana had planted stood tall and straight, reaching for light, just like he'd said. Just like his girls. We'll make it, he promised the quiet house. Whatever it takes. Upstairs, the whispers continued. 4 sisters, one heart beating in 4 different bodies. And him, the unexpected guardian, learning to be a father while his own heart struggled to keep up. But it would. It had to. Because some things were worth fighting for. Maya couldn't sleep. The numbers from her advanced calculus test kept swimming through her head. She got up for water, padding quietly down the dark hallway. A soft glow caught her eye, light from Howard's study. The door stood slightly ajar. At nearly midnight, she expected him to be asleep. No, that's not quite right, she heard him mutter. Try solving for X first. Maya peered through the crack. Howard sat at his desk, surrounded by papers. A laptop showed a video chat with a student she didn't recognize. But Mr. Jensen, the student said, I still don't understand why we can't just. Here, let me show you again. Howard picked up a pen, wincing as he shifted in his chair. His face looked tired, drawn. Maya stepped back, bumping into something solid. What's he doing? Destiny whispered behind her. Online tutoring, I think. Maya pulled her sister away from the door. At midnight, they retreated to Destiny's room. Kira and Tiana were already there, sitting on the bed. Couldn't sleep either? Destiny asked them. Tiana shook her head. I heard Howard coughing. Is working, Maya said. Teaching other kids. At night. Why? Kira hugged her knees. Destiny's face hardened. Money. For us. For everything we need. But his heart, Maya started. I know. Destiny stood up, pacing. Is pushing too hard. The medicine, the doctor's appointments, school supplies, food for 5 people. A creak in the hallway made them all freeze. Howard's footsteps passed by, heading downstairs. They heard the kitchen faucet run, then more coughing. We have to do something, Maya whispered. The next morning, Howard looked exhausted at breakfast. His hands shook slightly as he poured coffee. Late night? Destiny asked casually. He smiled tiredly. Just some reading. Really? Maya set down her fork. Because I needed water at midnight. Your study light was on. Howard's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. You're tutoring, Destiny said. Every night, aren't you? It's just a few students. Don't lie. Destiny's voice cracked. Please. No more lies. Howard set his cup down heavily. The expenses, they are more than I calculated. Your schools, the medications. So you're working yourself to death instead? Maya felt tears building. That's your solution. I'm fine. Stop saying that. Destiny slammed her hand on the table. Tiana jumped, spilling her juice. Inside voices, Howard reminded gently, reaching for a napkin. His movement was stiff, pained. No. Destiny stood up. You don't get to act like everything's normal. We saw you last night. You could barely sit straight. The social worker's coming today, Kira said quietly. What if you get sick during the visit? Howard's face paled slightly. He'd forgotten about the visit. I have an idea, Maya said suddenly. But you have to trust us. 2 hours later, the social worker, Ms. Chen, sat in their living room. Howard had taken his medication, changed his shirt twice from nervous sweating. So, Ms. Chen began. How is everyone adjusting? Before Howard could speak, Maya stepped forward. She pulled out a folder, hands only slightly shaking. We made a presentation, she said, about our family. Ms. Chen raised an eyebrow but nodded. Maya opened her laptop, connecting it to the TV. A PowerPoint appeared. The Jensen family, 3-month progress report. Maya, Howard started, but Destiny touched his arm. Let us do this, she whispered. For the next 30 minutes, the girls took turns presenting. Maya showed her advanced placement scores, the science fair project she was developing. Destiny displayed her debate team victories, her improved English grades. Kira and Tiana had drawn pictures of their daily routines, breakfast together, homework time in the garden, family game nights. Photos showed their rooms, now personalized and lived in. And this, Maya concluded, pulling up a spreadsheet, is our family schedule. We've organized study times, chores, medical appointments. Medical appointments. Ms. Chen interrupted. Yes. Destiny stepped forward. Howard has a heart condition, which he tried to hide because he was afraid you'd take us away. But we're handling it. Together. She showed their system, medication reminders, divided household tasks, taking turns cooking to reduce his workload. I have a part-time job at the library, Maya added. 3 hours after school, shelving books. And Destiny, I'm starting at the community center next week, Destiny said. Teaching debate to middle schoolers. Howard stared at them, speechless. Ms. Chen made notes, her expression unreadable. And the younger girls? I help with the garden, Tiana piped up. The sunflowers are taller than me now. I fold laundry, Kira added seriously. And I'm teaching Howard to draw. I see. Ms. Chen turned to Howard. Why didn't you disclose your medical condition? Howard swallowed hard. I was afraid. These girls, they've been through so much already. I couldn't bear the thought of them being taken away. By hiding it, you risked exactly that. We know, Destiny said. That's why we're being honest now. We're not hiding anything anymore. Ms. Chen studied them all for a long moment. You understand this changes things. There will need to be additional oversight, regular health checks. We've already researched backup guardians, Maya interrupted. Mrs. Patterson next door is a retired nurse. Linda Carson has emergency custody papers ready if needed. We have contingency plans. And Howard's going to rest more, Destiny added firmly. No more late-night tutoring. Howard's head snapped up. Ms. Chen's eyebrows rose. The girls found out last night, Howard admitted. I've been taking extra students to help with expenses. Which stops now, Destiny said. We can help. We want to help. That's not your responsibility, Howard protested. Family takes care of family, Maya said quietly. You taught us that. Ms. Chen closed her notebook. I'll need copies of all medical records, the backup guardian paperwork, and your work schedules, all of you. Already prepared. Maya handed over a thick folder. After Ms. Chen left, Howard sank into his chair, overwhelmed. You girls shouldn't have to. Stop. Destiny knelt beside him. You've been carrying everything alone. Let us help. I'm supposed to take care of you. And you are, Maya said. But we take care of you too. That's how family works. Tiana climbed into his lap, careful not to bump his chest. No more working at night. Howard hugged her close. No more working at night. Promise. Kira pressed. I promise. That evening, they sat in the garden. The sunflowers towered above them, strong and steady. Howard watched his girls, Destiny helping Maya with college application essays, Kira teaching Tiana to draw flowers. His phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Chen. Preliminary report positive. Family demonstrates exceptional mutual support and adaptation. Quarterly review scheduled. Howard smiled, feeling tears prick his eyes. Not from fear this time, but from pride. From love. From hope. Destiny stared at the scholarship application on her laptop screen until the words blurred together. She'd rewritten the personal essay 12 times already. The deadline loomed 3 days away. You're still up? Maya's voice came from the doorway. Can't sleep? Destiny rubbed her eyes. This essay has to be perfect. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, peering at the screen. Describe a challenge that shaped your character. What did you write? Everything. Nothing. Destiny pushed back from the desk. How do I explain us? The homes? The rejections? Howard. Tell the truth, Maya said simply. The truth? Destiny laughed bitterly. That we were unwanted until a sick old man took pity on us. That's not what happened and you know it. Before Destiny could respond, a loud thump echoed from downstairs. Both girls froze. Howard. Destiny called out. No answer. They ran downstairs to find Howard slumped in his chair during a parent-teacher conference. His face was gray, one hand clutching his chest. Call 911. Destiny ordered Maya, rushing to Howard's side. The teacher on the video call was already panicking. Should I contact someone? The school counselor? No, both girls shouted. Maya dialed with shaking fingers while Destiny checked Howard's pulse like Mrs. Patterson had taught them. Howard, look at me, Destiny pleaded. Stay awake. His eyes flickered. Girls, don't let them. No one's separating us, Destiny promised. Just stay with us. The next hours passed in a blur. Ambulance. Emergency room. Forms to fill out. Linda arrived to help, bringing coffee and reassurance. His medication needs adjustment, the doctor explained later. The stress of the parent-teacher conference triggered an episode. He'll need rest, but he'll recover. Destiny sat by Howard's hospital bed while Maya took the younger girls home with Linda. The heart monitor beeped steadily. I know you're awake, she said softly. Howard opened his eyes. That obvious. Your breathing changed. She took his hand, careful of the fall. You scared us. I'm sorry. The teacher started talking about Maya's science project costs. Stop. Destiny squeezed his hand. Maya's already won 3 competitions. The prize money more than covers everything. But your scholarship application is done. Destiny pulled out her laptop. Want to hear it? Howard nodded weakly. She opened the document and began to read. 3 years ago, I was a statistic. A 14-year-old foster child with 3 younger sisters, rejected by 7 families because we refused to be separated. I built walls around my heart, protected my sisters, and stopped believing in happy endings. Then Howard Jensen walked into our lives. Not with grand promises or dramatic gestures, but with math tutoring, garden metaphors, and endless patience. He taught us that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. Every day, we choose each other. When we discovered his heart condition, my first instinct was fear. The system had taught me that weakness meant abandonment. But Howard taught us something different. He showed us that true strength lies in vulnerability, in asking for help, in trusting others to catch you when you fall. My sisters and I aren't statistics anymore. We're students, artists, dreamers. Maya's developing solar-powered garden sensors. Kira's art won the district show. Tiana reads to Howard every night, sounding out big words while he rests. And me? I'm learning to let my walls down, to accept love without waiting for it to be taken away, to believe in happy endings again. The challenge that shaped my character wasn't surviving foster care. It was learning to live after it, learning that family can be built, not just born, that love multiplies when you share it, that sometimes the biggest act of courage is letting yourself be cared for. Howard Jensen didn't save us. He showed us how to save ourselves. And in doing so, we saved him too. Destiny looked up. Howard was crying silently. Too much? She asked. He shook his head, squeezing her hand. The next morning, Maya arrived early with her laptop. I have something to show you both. She pulled up her email. Remember that science competition? The big one? State finals, Howard said. Next month. I got in. Maya's voice trembled. All expenses paid. And there's more. She opened another email. College recruiters will be there. Early admission track. Maya. Destiny hugged her sister. That's amazing. Howard beamed from his hospital bed. Always knew you could do it. We need to celebrate, Destiny declared. First, he needs to rest, Maya said firmly. Doctor's orders. They spent the morning organizing Howard's release paperwork. Maya worked on her project while Destiny finished scholarship applications. The younger girls arrived after school with Linda. Look. Tiana thrust a paper at Howard. I got an A on my reading test. And I made this, Kira added, showing a detailed drawing of their garden. Howard gathered them close, mindful of his four. My brilliant girls. That evening, Linda helped them set up a small party in Howard's room. Hospital staff looked the other way as they smuggled in cupcakes and decorations. A toast, Destiny proposed, raising her paper cup of juice. To family. To dreams, Maya added. To garden miracles, Kira said. To love, Tiana finished. Howard looked at them, his daughters and everything but blood. To us. Later, after the younger girls had gone home with Linda, Destiny and Maya sat with Howard. I finished all the scholarship applications, Destiny said. And Maya's got her project presentation ready. I never doubted you would. Howard's voice was tired but proud. We made a schedule, Maya explained. For when you come home, taking turns staying with you, keeping up with schoolwork. Girls, non-negotiable, Destiny cut in. Family takes care of family. Remember? Howard smiled. I remember. That night, Destiny added a postscript to her essay. As I write this, I'm sitting in a hospital room, watching my father sleep. Not my biological father, but the man who chose us, who fights his own battles while helping us win ours, who taught us that love isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. I used to think strength meant standing alone. Now I know it means standing together. And we stand tall, like the sunflowers in our garden, faces turned toward the light we make for each other. She sent the application, then curled up in the hospital chair. Maya was already asleep on the small couch, her project notes scattered around her. Howard stirred. You should go home, get some rest. We're already home, Destiny whispered. Right here. The envelope sat on the kitchen table like a bomb waiting to explode. Destiny stared at it, afraid to move closer. The return address gleamed in the morning light, National Merit Scholarship Foundation. Just open it, Maya said from behind her. Whatever it says. We're here. Howard stood in the doorway, still moving carefully after his hospital stay 2 weeks ago. She's right. You've done everything you could. Destiny's hand shook as she picked up the envelope. It's thin. Rejection letters are usually thin. Or they email those now, Maya countered. Paper means something good. Destiny took a deep breath and tore it open. Her eyes scanned the first line. The paper slipped from her fingers. I got it, she whispered. Full ride. Any university in the state system. The kitchen exploded into chaos. Maya screamed. Howard swept Destiny into a gentle hug. Kira and Tiana came running downstairs in their pajamas. What happened? Kira demanded. Your sister, Howard said, voice thick with emotion. Just got a full college scholarship. Tiana jumped up and down. Does this mean you're smart like Maya? Destiny laughed through her tears. Different kind of smart. Speaking of which, she turned to Maya. Don't you have news too? Maya blushed. I was waiting for the right time. What news? Howard asked. Maya pulled out her phone, showing them an email. My science project. It won first place at state. And the university recruiters. She took a shaky breath. They offered me early admission. Full scholarship. I can start college classes next year while finishing high school. Howard had to sit down. Both of you? In one day. Actually, Kira spoke up. I got picked for the gifted art program. They want me to show my garden paintings at the district exhibition. Everyone turned to Tiana, who grinned. I got a gold star on my math test. Howard opened his arms, and all four girls piled into a group hug. My brilliant, amazing daughters. We learned from the best, Destiny said softly. The doorbell rang. Linda stood outside with Mrs. Patterson and several other neighbors. We saw the scholarship car in the driveway, Linda explained. Couldn't wait to hear. They both got full rides, Howard announced proudly. And Kira's joining the gifted program, and Tiana's mastering math. The living room filled with congratulations and hugs. Mrs. Patterson wiped tears from her eyes. I remember when you first moved in, she said. I was so worried. I'm sorry I doubted you, Howard. We all were, another neighbor admitted. But you've proven us wrong in the best way. Later that afternoon, Howard sat in his garden chair, watching his girls. Maya explained her solar sensor project to fascinated neighbors. Destiny showed Linda her scholarship details. Kira gave art tours of her garden paintings while Tiana practiced reading aloud to Mrs. Patterson. They are remarkable, Linda said, sitting beside Howard. You know the odds they've beaten? Foster kids aging out of the system, statistics for education. They are not statistics, Howard replied. They never were. No, they're miracles. And so are you. Linda squeezed his hand. Your heart's getting stronger. Having something to live for helps. The celebration continued into evening. Neighbors brought food. Someone strung lights in the garden. Maya's science teacher dropped by with congratulations and college brochures. I have something for each of you, Howard announced after dinner. He handed each girl a small box. Inside each was a delicate garden-themed charm bracelet. Sarah helped me pick these out, he said quietly. Before she passed. Said someday we'd have daughters to give them to. But how did you know? Maya asked, touching the tiny microscope charm on hers. I didn't, but she did. Howard smiled. She always said love finds its way home. Destiny's bracelet had a book charm. Maya's had a microscope. Kira's held an artist's palette, and Tiana's a tiny flower. There's something else, Howard continued. He pulled out a folder. I've been working with Linda and the lawyers. If you want, it's time to make this official. Legal adoption papers, for all of you. The girls stared at the documents. But we're already family, Tiana said, confused. Yes, we are. Howard touched his heart. This just makes it official on paper. But only if you want to. Want to? Destiny's voice broke. Do you know how long we've wanted this? Maya was already grabbing pens. Kira hugged the papers to her chest. Tiana practiced writing her new name, Tiana Jensen. As the sun set, the garden lights twinkled like stars. Neighbors drifted home, leaving the family to their joy. Howard sat in his favorite chair, surrounded by his daughters. Read it again, Tiana begged Destiny. Destiny pulled out her scholarship letter. But instead of reading it, she spoke from memory. 3 years ago, I was a statistic. Today, I'm a daughter, a sister, a scholar. Today, I know that family isn't about where you start, but where you choose to grow roots. Today, I'm no longer afraid of happy endings, because I'm living one. That's not what it really says, Tiana protested. No, Destiny agreed, pulling her close. But it's what it means. Howard watched his girls, no longer broken, no longer afraid. Maya sketching plans for her next project. Kira adding details to her garden paintings. Tiana practicing her signature over and over. Tiana Jensen, Tiana Jensen. And Destiny, his first miracle. Watching over them all with eyes no longer guarded but bright with hope. Sarah, he whispered to the evening sky, you were right. Love found its way home. The adoption papers sat on the table, waiting for morning, for signatures, for forever to begin. But really, Howard knew, forever had started long ago. In a garden, with four girls who needed love and one man who needed family. Sometimes the best miracles grow in the most unexpected places. 1 year. The words echoed in Howard's mind as he stood in his daughter's graduation gown, smoothing imaginary wrinkles. Destiny paced the living room in her own matching gown, practicing her valedictorian speech. What if I forget everything? She asked, gripping her note cards. You won't. Howard checked his watch. But we should leave soon. Maya's saving seats. I can't believe it's been a year. Destiny stopped pacing. Since the adoption became official. Best year of my life. Howard straightened her cap. Ready to make history. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Maya had secured front row seats, Kira and Tiana bouncing beside her in their best dresses. Linda and Mrs. Patterson sat nearby, cameras ready. There she is. Tiana pointed as Destiny took the stage. Howard's heart swelled with pride as Destiny stepped up to the podium. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice rang clear. Distinguished guests, faculty, family, and fellow graduates, she began. 1 year ago, I sat in my new bedroom, convinced I'd never belong anywhere. Today, I stand here as your valedictorian, but more importantly, as a daughter and sister who finally found her way home. In the audience, Maya wiped tears. Kira clutched Howard's hand. Life doesn't always give us what we expect, Destiny continued. Sometimes it gives us what we need. Sometimes a family isn't born. It's built, one day at a time, with love and patience and faith. She looked directly at Howard. To my father, who taught me that courage isn't about being fearless, but about facing fear with hope. To my sisters, who showed me that strength comes in many forms, and to everyone who thought we couldn't make it, thank you for giving us something to prove wrong. After the ceremony, amid hugs and photos, Maya pulled out her own surprise. Early acceptance letter, she announced. They want me to start the advanced program this summer. Howard blinked back tears. Both my girls in college. And look, Kira held up her art portfolio. The gallery wants to show my whole series. They're calling it Garden Dreams. Tiana tugged Howard's sleeve. I made honor roll too. Neighbors and teachers stopped to congratulate them. Even the principal seemed emotional. Your family, she told Howard, is an inspiration. Later that evening, they gathered in the garden for a private celebration. String lights twinkled overhead, and the summer air smelled of roses and hope. Speech! Maya called out. Dad, your turn. Howard stood, looking at his daughters. 1 year ago, I was a lonely old man with a bad heart and an empty house. Now I have 4 brilliant daughters, a garden full of life, and more love than I ever dreamed possible. And better medication, Destiny added, making everyone laugh. And better medication, Howard agreed. But most importantly, I have a future worth fighting for. You girls didn't just give me a family. You gave me a reason to live. Maya raised her glass. To Dad, who never gave up on us. To us, Destiny added, for never giving up on each other. A car pulled into the driveway. Their nearest neighbor, Mr. Thompson, stepped out looking uncomfortable. I heard about the graduation, he said, shuffling his feet. And the scholarships. I owe you all an apology. Howard remembered the man's initial opposition, the whispered concerns about a single man adopting 4 girls. I was wrong, Mr. Thompson continued. What you've built here, it's beautiful. I brought this. He held out a gift bag. Inside was a handmade wind chime, delicate glass pieces catching the evening light. For your garden, he explained. My wife used to make them. It's perfect, Howard said softly. Thank you. As the evening wound down, Howard found himself alone with Destiny in the garden. Nervous about college? He asked. A little. She touched the charm bracelet she never took off. But I'm ready. You taught me how to be brave. You taught me first. Howard hugged her. Finding you girls, it saved my life. Finding each other saved all of us. Inside, they could hear Maya explaining her latest project to Kira and Tiana. The wind chime tinkled gently in the breeze. Dad? Destiny's voice was soft. I found something. When I was packing, she pulled out an envelope, old and creased. Howard recognized Sarah's handwriting. To my future family, Destiny read, I may not meet you in this life, but I know you're out there. Howard has so much love to give. Help him remember how to live. Help him tend the garden of his heart. And know that somewhere, I'm smiling, because love finally found its way home. Howard couldn't speak. Destiny took his hand. She knew, she whispered. Somehow, she knew we'd find each other. The next morning, Howard found thank you letters on his desk. One from each daughter. Maya's detailed how his belief in her abilities had given her courage to pursue her dreams. Kira's included a painting of their first family dinner. Tiana's was decorated with carefully drawn hearts and flowers. Destiny simply said, "Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying. Thank you for making us believe in happy endings again. Love, your daughter." Howard placed the letters in his special box, next to Sarah's picture and the girl's first adoption papers. His heart felt full to bursting, but strong, steady, healed. In the garden, the sunflowers Tiana had planted stood taller than ever. Maya's solar sensors tracked their movement. Kira's easel waited for morning light. Destiny's graduation robes hung by the window. 1 year, 4 daughters, countless miracles. And this was just the beginning. The university auditorium buzzed with excitement as Howard adjusted his tie for the 3rd time. Maya sat beside him, practically vibrating with anticipation. There she is. Kira pointed to the stage where Destiny stood with other scholarship recipients. "Ladies and gentlemen," the dean announced, "I present this year's Distinguished Merit Scholars." Howard watched as Destiny stepped forward to receive her award. Her hands were steady, her smile bright. In the audience, Tiana bounced in her seat, holding up a handmade sign. "My sister's a genius." And now, the dean continued, "We have a special presentation from our Early Achievement Program. Maya Jensen, please join us on stage." Maya squeezed Howard's hand before walking up. Her research project displayed on the giant screen behind her, the solar-powered garden monitoring system she'd developed over the past year. "My inspiration came from my father's garden," Maya began, her voice clear and confident. "A place where broken things learn to grow again. Where science meets nurture. Where family blooms in unexpected soil." University officials nodded approvingly. Howard noticed several taking notes. In the front row, corporate sponsors leaned forward with interest. After the ceremony, reporters gathered around the family. "Mr. Jensen, how does it feel to have 2 daughters receiving full scholarships on the same day?" Howard opened his mouth to respond, but Destiny stepped in. "Our father taught us that education isn't just about books. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. About reaching higher than you think you can reach, and supporting each other," Maya added. "Everything I've achieved started with him believing in me." A photographer asked them to pose for a family photo. They gathered in the university's garden, fitting, Howard thought. Destiny in her award sash, Maya with her project certificate, Kira showing off her latest art portfolio, Tiana proudly displaying her gifted program acceptance letter. "One more surprise," Destiny announced once they were home. She handed Howard an envelope. Inside was a letter from the State Education Board. His hands trembled as he read it. "They want to feature our story," Destiny explained. "Use it to encourage more single parents to consider adopting older children. Your medical records show significant improvement too," Maya added, pulling out another paper. "The doctor says your heart's stronger than it's been in years." Howard looked around his living room, once so empty, now full of life. School awards covered the walls. Art supplies cluttered every surface. College brochures mixed with Tiana's homework on the coffee table. "Dad?" Kira touched his arm. The gallery called. "They sold 3 more of my garden paintings, and I got picked for the spelling bee," Tiana announced. Howard gathered them close. "When did you all grow up so fast?" "We had a good teacher," Destiny said softly. Later that evening, they sat in their garden. Howard's roses bloomed alongside Tiana's sunflowers. Maya's sensors blinked quietly, monitoring soil conditions. Kira sketched the sunset while Destiny reviewed college housing options. "Remember our first night here?" Maya asked. "How scared we all were." "I wasn't scared," Tiana protested. "Yes, you were," Kira teased. "You wouldn't let go of Destiny's hand." "I remember thinking it wouldn't last," Destiny admitted. "That something would go wrong, like always." Howard touched his heart, feeling its strong, steady beat. "But it did last. Because you fought for us," Maya said. "Even when you were sick. Even when people doubted you. Even when we doubted ourselves," Destiny added. A car pulled up outside. Linda and Mrs. Patterson emerged carrying boxes. "We found them," Linda called out. "All the old photos, just like you asked." They spread the pictures across the patio table, a visual timeline of their family's growth. Howard's first meeting with the girls at the youth center. Moving day. First Christmas. School events. Garden parties. "Look how small I was." Tiana giggled at an early photo. Look how tired Dad was, Kira said softly, touching a picture from his hospital stay. Look how far we've come, Destiny whispered. Howard found his favorite photo, all 5 of them covered in dirt after planting the first sunflowers. Their faces uncertain but hopeful, already starting to trust. We should take a new one, Maya suggested. Same spot, same pose. They arranged themselves by the sunflowers, now towering above their heads. Linda snapped the picture. Perfect, she declared, showing them. Just look at the difference. The differences were striking. No more shadows in their eyes. No more tension in their poses. Just a family, solid and sure, faces bright with joy. Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes. I remember praying for you, Howard. After Sarah, you were so lost. But look at you now. Look at all of us now, he corrected. The evening stretched on, full of stories and laughter. Neighbors dropped by with congratulations. Teachers called with college recommendations. Even the adoption committee sent a commendation letter. Finally, as stars appeared above their garden, Howard raised his glass. To my daughters, who taught me that love is stronger than fear, who gave me back my life when I thought it was over. To our father, Destiny responded, who showed us that family isn't about perfect moments, but perfect love. To second chances, Meyer added. To growing together, Kira said. To forever, Tiana finished. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Howard sat alone in his garden. Sarah's picture rested in his lap. You'd love them so much, he whispered. They're everything we dreamed of and more. The wind stirred the wind chimes, a gentle melody in the dark. Upstairs, he heard his daughter's quiet voices, sharing secrets and dreams. Howard touched the sketch Kira had made, their family portrait, surrounded by blooming flowers. Below it, she'd written, some gardens grow flowers. The best ones grow love. Tomorrow, Destiny would start college preparations. Maya would continue her research. Kira would paint more masterpieces. Tiana would conquer another spelling list. And Howard would watch them bloom, his heart strong and full, knowing that sometimes the greatest miracles grow from the smallest chances. Sometimes the perfect family isn't born. It's built, one day at a time, with patience and hope and unconditional love. In their garden, under stars and string lights, 5 hearts beat as one. 4 girls who needed a home. 1 man who needed a family. And love, finally, eternally, home at last.